Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Leadership Learning webinar series. Today's topic is Success Through Writing. The series provides monthly learning on relevant business topics and is hosted by Lake Forest Graduate School of Management. Lake Forest is an independent, accredited institution with over 50 years of experience in providing practical business leader education. We do this through our MBA program, certificates, and corporate development courses. I'm your host, Carol Maudlin, Program Manager of Corporate Learning Solutions here at Lake Forest Graduate School of Management. The Corporate Learning Solutions program is part of Lake Forest business that specializes in developing corporate managers and leaders. We combine relevant content with the expertise of our business leader faculty to provide customized training, consultation, coaching, and organizational development services to help our clients achieve results with learning. Today, we are grateful for the support of our sponsor, Trustmark Foundation and Trustmark. Trustmark provides access to a full spectrum of flexible benefit solutions, including health plan administration for self-funded employer groups, payroll-deducted voluntary products, group medical benefits, and health and fitness management programs. We are able to bring this webinar to you on a complimentary basis as a result of Trustmark's support. Today, I'd like to take a few moments to talk about how we will interact. During the program, you will be invited to take a poll and respond using emoticons. The polls will pop up on your screen, and they will pop up on your screen and they'll be very self-explanatory, so you'll be able to take them easily. The emoticons can be found on the right side of your screen over in this area over here. You can see where I'm marking the screen. If you have a question or a comment, please use the chat function. We have a chat function over here. This is where you will be doing the chatting. And there is a drop-down button right at the end of the chat bar. Please make sure that it's set to all attendees before submitting. Comments and questions will be addressed at the end of the program, so we'll be watching the chat box throughout. Please be sure you are muted and that your video is off for the entire program. That will help us avoid unnecessary distractions for the program. So now that we're ready to go, please click Raise Hand when you have closed your other applications and you're ready to start. So just reaching over to that emoticon, and I'm seeing lots of hands going up. Thank you. All right, it looks like we are about ready to start. So at this point, I'd like to introduce you to our faculty member today, Sangita Kasturi. Sangita is a Lake Forest Business Leader faculty member, and she'll be leading today's program. And in addition to a great variety of Lake Forest corporate programs, Sangita also teaches executive success skills, global business and cultural diversity, and leading organizational change in the Lake Forest Graduate School of Management MBA program. Sangita is the principal and founder of TAN 270, a global consulting firm that builds organizational effectiveness through programs and consultations in leadership, women in leadership, diversity, cultural intelligence, change management, and communication. Sangita has served in global communication roles at Johnson Controls, Panduit, Motorola, and Allstate, and has led programs in China, Japan, Singapore, Mexico, and Europe. So without further ado, welcome, Sangita.
Carol, thank you so much for that introduction, and welcome, everybody. As you know, writing has taken a higher level of importance, even more than I would say 20 or 30 years ago. Why? Because so many of our teams are global, so much of our communication is virtual, and add to that the added dimension that you're often communicating with people from different cultures. What you really have on your hand, if you don't manage written communication well, is plenty of opportunity for misunderstanding, plenty of opportunity for, maybe even inadvertently offending other people. But mainly, I think, there's a lot of opportunity to send a message you didn't intend to send. Before we actually dive into the program, let me ask you a couple of things, and just think about this. Just think about this. When is the last time you saw an email that was too wordy? In fact, why don't you raise your hand if any of this resonates with you?
When is the last time you saw an email that was too worthy? When is the last time you saw a piece of written communication that was filled with unnecessary capitalization? When is the last time you read a document and you said to yourself, what? What does that mean? What did I just read? And you might have even, if you were new to the company or organization, you might have questioned your own understanding, saying to yourself, wow, you know, maybe I don't know the subject matter enough, that's why I didn't get it. Trust me when I say 9 out of 10 times, it's not because you didn't know the subject matter, it's because it wasn't written too clearly. We see things like too much jargon, grammatical errors. We see memos and emails and documentation that goes on and on and on and on and simply does not get to the point quickly. By the time the point is made, you've lost the reader, or the reader has lost you. Misuse of words, passive voice, where you can go on and on and on, and in fact, we will for the next hour. So what are we going to do for the next hour? Well, we're going to talk about how you can avoid all of those mistakes we just talked about. We're going to talk about how you can get to the point quickly using a technique called the upside-down triangle. We'll talk about how important headings and subheadings are, how crucial they are to promoting understanding. So this isn't just about, you know, my boss said put some headings in there, or, you know, I took executive success skills with Sangita and she took 2 points off my paper because I didn't use subheadings. It's not about that at all. It's really about increasing comprehension. We're going to talk about a concept called communicate to inform, not to impress. And I'm going to say that again because it's important. Communicate to inform, not to impress. Get the grammar right. Know your audience. And then we'll get into what your thoughts are and try to answer the questions that you have. So when Carol opened, she mentioned that we will be handling questions at the end. What I encourage you to do, though, is chat your questions to us. As questions come up, when we get to the end, you might forget. So chat them to us, and we will make our best effort
to answer all of them. Okay. So let's begin with the live poll. Have you ever formed an opinion about someone based on their writing? The writing could be an email, a report. It could be a summary of something. Have you ever formed an opinion? Carol, why don't we go ahead and open the poll?
Okay, I'm opening the poll now. You should be able to see the poll open on your screen. Just go ahead and click off the little radio button that corresponds with your experience here. And we're seeing lots of responses come in, Sangita.
Excellent, excellent. So we will show you the results of the poll in just a moment.
Okay, we'll give it a few more seconds, but if you haven't had a chance to click in, please click in now. I'll be closing the poll in about 2 seconds, and then once that gets all set up, then I'll publish the results to you.
Yeah, so think about it. Right now I'm looking at the results coming in, and you'll be seeing them in a moment.
We've got 17 seconds, so we'll be ready.
We've got 17 seconds to go. I won't do a countdown. 17 seconds to go. And I have to tell you, most of you are saying you do form opinions based on writing. So Carol, let's go ahead and look at those results.
Okay. Okay, you should be able to see the poll results.
Participants, can you raise your hands and let us know that you're able to see the poll results, please? Are participants able to see the poll results? Are we running into some technical difficulty? Hopefully not because of a miscommunication through some form of written documentation that we provided. All right, we're going to move on and we're going to come back to the poll. We will come back to the poll. Okay. So when it comes to business writing, we said it at the beginning, one of the biggest culprits of making writing complex, complicated, and hard to understand is that we become extremely bureaucratic and dense in the way we write. We use a lot of jargon, mistakenly thinking that the more complicated, the bigger words we use, the smarter we sound. Let me show you an example of what I mean. So take a moment to read this, and I will read along with you. Dear Joan, in response to your request for a travel subsidy to the conference where your award will be given, Jonathan has reminded me of our current discretionary spending freeze. He has decided, however, to make an exception in this instance, so long as your flight is no more than $400 and you stick to a $50 per diem. Please submit your fully documented expenses upon your return. Now, some of you may be looking at this and saying to yourself, well, this seems perfectly fine. It's professional. There are no typos. What could possibly be wrong with this? So I want you to think about how many times you had to read this before you understood what it was saying. And let's look at an example of how we can simplify. Look at the version on the bottom, example 2. Dear Joan, congratulations on your SPIVI award. We're delighted for you. Despite our current discretionary spending freeze, Jonathan wants to support your travel to accept your award. We can manage a $400 flight reimbursement and a $50 per diem. You'll be a great company representative. So what were the differences between number 1 and number 2? Do you note the difference in clarity? Do you recognize how number 2 is not only clearer, gets to the point right away, but it also sets a tone that's friendly and inviting? It doesn't mince words. The message isn't complicated. And this is what we're really going for in terms of the way we write and communicate. In corporate communication, the trend in corporate communication worldwide, not just in the United States, worldwide in corporate communication, the trend is toward more conversational, friendlier, more direct and to the point. The trend is away from overcomplicated, over-formalized communication. And a big reason for that is because as we do business with more and more people internationally, as we begin to communicate with people for whom English is not the first language, it will be better for all parties involved to use simple language that gets the message across clearly. Less is more. Keep that in mind. Less is more. Your audience is going to remember about 20% of what you tell them. Think about it, 20%. That means you will be best served and your audience will be best served if you focused on 3 to 5 key points per communication event. And I would even say err on the side of 3. So what is a communication event? An email is a communication event, an event in which communication happened. You sent the email, you sat down and talked to your boss, you addressed employees at a town hall meeting. Regardless of what it is, ask yourself, when people left here or when people finished reading my email, if there were only 3 things I wanted them to remember, what would those 3 things be? And make sure you get that information front and center right up front. I'm going to actually, Carol, I'm going to actually turn to you for a moment here and ask if we've been able to find those poll results.
Actually, if participants can look on the side panel of their display, they should be able to see the poll results. I'll try to publish them one more time, see if we have better results this time.
As Carol is doing this, let's keep moving forward. You know, a lot of times when I tell people to be brief and to the point, to be concise, the question that I get back most often is, but isn't that rude? How can you be direct, brief, and concise and be rude at the same time? Think back to the SPIVI award letter that we read a few slides ago. The second one was much clearer, much more direct and to the point, and at the same time, it was, I would say, more friendly, so friendlier and more polite than the first one. So it is possible to be concise, polite, and friendly all at once. Can we get a participant hand raise, can you tell us if you're seeing the poll? Can you please raise your hands? Would really appreciate if people are able to raise your hands to let us know you can see the poll.
I am seeing a lot of hands raised, Sangita, so that's a good sign. Glad you're able to see the polls. And we apologize for the beeping that you may hear in the background. We're working to remedy that situation.
Yeah, as I said before, Carol, I hope it's not a result of written miscommunication.
I certainly hope not, Sangita.
Okay. So let's look at another example. Let's look at an example from the Mercantile Association of Greater Gotham. The Mercantile Association of Greater Gotham is delighted to count you amongst its newest members. The Mercantile Association will provide not only networking opportunities, but also advantageous insurance rates, concierge services, and internet advertising to its members. If you ever confront business issues with which the Mercantile Association might be able to devote its resources, it stands to be ready to be of assistance. Now, another clue is if you find yourself taking a breath in between a sentence, probably that sentence is too long. I encourage all of you to read your communication pieces out loud, and if you need to take a breath, break it up into 2 sentences. I'll say it again. If you need to take a breath, break it up into 2 sentences. Now, again, with this example, there are probably people out there saying, hey, what's wrong with this? It's professional, it's friendly, they say we're delighted to count you. Well, let's contrast that to another example of the same information. Look at example 2 on the bottom. We're delighted to count you among our newest members here at the Mercantile Association of Greater Gotham. As a member, you can benefit from our networking opportunities as well as great insurance rates, concierge services, and internet advertising. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We are here to help you. Again, you only have to read it once to understand the points that they're making. And there are many, the words in the first one are, far greater in count than the second one. And it was the same with the other example we saw. Surprisingly, fewer words lead to more clarity. Remember, less is more. When we release formality and complexity, think of it this way. Think of a piece of information that somebody asks you to proofread. So your colleague comes over to you and says, hey, Anna, do you think you can read this for me and, tell me what you think? So Anna begins to read, and she goes, well, I don't quite understand what it means. And then you say, well, in other words, what we're really saying is, or what I mean by that is. If you're finding yourself explaining something to someone in other words or what I really mean, just say what you really mean to begin with. If you need to say it in other words, just use those other words to begin with. I hope that makes sense. Whenever you find yourself saying to someone or writing in other words, lose the first sentence and just go with what those other words are. Now let me ask you, did you ever hear of an upside-down cake? Of course you have. Most of us have. But what about an upside-down triangle? You might have heard about that too, maybe in geometry class. But what does an upside-down triangle have to do with writing, and why does it matter? Upside-down triangle actually is a technique that comes to us from newspapers, and it actually comes to us from the days of print journalism, and it's an excellent practice that some of the top communication professionals use even to this day. And it goes like this. It says stack your information with the most critical information at the top. When you read a James Patterson novel or when you read a Stephen King novel, you don't want to know what the ending is. You don't want to know who murdered the babysitter. You want to find that out. But in business communication, don't make your reader read to the end to find out. They may never get to the end. They may be past security checkpoint by that time. Their phones are away. Give away the ending right at the beginning. We call this burying the lead. Do not bury the lead.
Unless you're writing a mystery novel, do not bury the lead. So here's how an upside-down triangle writing format goes. The most critical elements of your message, they go right up front. Explain yourself later. The most critical elements of your message, along with why should I keep reading this, why does it matter to the reader, goes up right up front. And we'll talk about this a few slides later. I'll show you some example. Then you give some explanation, some context, and some background. Finally, at the end, you can give some additional nice-to-know information. So you'll throw in that additional information at the end. So why in this format? Because people are likely to only read the first few sentences of your communication anyway. How many times have you been in a business meeting where you said, I sent everything out ahead of time, didn't anyone read it? Well, some of them might have. Some of them might have opened it up and looked at the first couple of paragraphs and literally just skimmed through the end. The reason a lot of information gets missed is because we bury it in page 2, we bury it at the bottom of paragraph 3. If it's important, put it up front and give the explanation in the following paragraph. All right, so let's look at an example. For the past few years, Yahoo has been struggling to remain competitive and maintain currency and relevance. This has proven difficult for the Internet giant, renowned for progressive benefits, including flex time, I'm out of breath right here, which is reportedly being abused according to After much deliberation, et cetera, we eliminated the work from home policy, which, again, I know that there are people out there saying, so what? What's wrong with this? Well, let's see how it compares to a simpler example. In an unprecedented move, the Internet giant Yahoo has revoked its work from home policy. Right there in the first paragraph, we let people know work from home is gone. In the first example, we don't talk about that key message until the third, fourth, or fifth sentence. The move, which has angered many, is designed to increase employee face time. Okay, so what they did, why they did it, where did the decision come from? CEO Marissa Myers, after several years of struggle to remain relevant. Do you see the difference between 1 and 2? Do you see how important it is to get right to the point? So now the question is, can we take this example and make it even better? And if so, how? So we already said that in this example. We got to the most important points right away. So let's talk now about how we can incorporate headings and subheadings to make it even clearer. So subheadings guide the reader to help them organize the information. We call this chunking. So you take chunks of similar information and you group them under a subhead. And we'll see in a minute why that's important and how that helps. So chunking helps you organize, and it helps your reader retain more information. When you send your message, think about what the heading is. Think about what the heading is, whether it's an email subject line or whether it's a document or an article. The subject line and the heading should not be an accident. They should really say something. All right, so let's look at an example. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the Yahoo example. What if we took the Yahoo simplified version, so we saw a complicated version of the work from home policy revocation message, we saw a simplified version, and now what if we added headings and subheadings? A step back to the 90s? In an unprecedented move, Internet giant Yahoo has revoked its work from home policy in what many are calling a step back to the old days. Yahoo's reaction, the move which has angered many, why now, right? Why are we doing this now? The decision from CEO Marissa Myers. How do the subheadings work here? You're going to have a lot of people, in fact, most people are skimmers and they're not readers. I know handfuls of excellent
very diligent, very conscientious employees who send me reams and reams of information. Why? As attachments, by the way. Why? Well, they're diligent enough to read it ahead of time. Doesn't everybody else? No. Most people, and I know you all can vouch for this, most people do not read the stuff you send them ahead of a meeting. And yet we continue to do it over and over and over again. And now isn't that the definition of insanity? When we keep doing the same thing over and over again, even though it doesn't work. So are we saying don't send info ahead of time? No, we're not saying that. Send it for the people who can use it and for the people who do benefit from it. In addition, condense your message, even in your email. Condense the content of your attachments with some exciting headings and relevant subheadings that make your reader want to read. Even for those who skim, just a quick glance at this tells me right away that it's about the Yahoo work from home policy, that they talk about what happened, how people reacted, and why they're doing this now. If we go back a little bit, a couple of slides back, think about newspapers. Headings and subheads matter a lot, and your newspapers are filled with them. They're filled with them because they help comprehension. They help readers parse the information, and they help you retain the information better. Okay? So headings and subheadings, very, very important. I talked about when you have a communication event, and let's consider this a communication event, what are the top 3 to 5 things you want people to walk away with? Using headings and subheadings is one of the top 5 things I want you all to walk away with from this webinar. The other thing I want you to walk away with is using an upside-down triangle where you put the most relevant information right up front. We mentioned when we opened that the goal of communication is to inform. So many times I hear people, and I know you hear people say, I communicated with so-and-so. I can't believe so-and-so still didn't do what I asked, him or her to do. I communicated with them. And what we mean by communication is I told them. I have no idea if my message was communicated. I have no idea if they really understood. But I communicated. I told them what to do. Keep in mind, communication is not about you, and it's not about what you said. Communication is about whether or not the other party hears your message the way you intended for it to be heard. Clarity, and we talked about building clarity up to this point via the upside-down triangle by the use of headings and subheads. Let me also add that jargon and dense language detract from clarity. And when you use active voice rather than passive voice, it adds to clarity. So avoiding passive voice and using active, and I'll show you what that means in just a few, really adds to clarity. Another thing that we do when we're communicating with others is we want to impress them. And, let's see if I can, use some complicated words, if I can talk about the, if I can show how complex something is and how I really get it and I'm able to speak to that complexity, I'm going to look really, really smart. But again, communication is not about the words you use. It's about whether you're able to get your message across to the other party. And trust me, you will look really, really smart when you're able to communicate your message really, really well. One of the hallmarks of intelligence also, by the way, is to simplify the complex, not oversimplify, but to simplify it. Even if we were to extend this idea to, let's say, figure skaters in the Olympics, a lot of hard work went into what they do. I mean, it's complex. It's not easy, and yet they make it look easy. If they struggled and showed what a struggle it was, we wouldn't admire them as much. I'm going to, at this point, turn this over to you, and I am going to have Carol unmute the lines in just a few moments, and I'm hoping that 3 of you will be able to raise your hands so that you can share how you have simplified this. And I'm looking at the participant list, and I know some of you want it. So, you know, in class I say if I make eye contact with you, I will call on you. Let's just say if I recognize your name, be prepared. But we will go the voluntary route first, and I'll ask you to raise your hands if you want to share. All right, so let's read this together. The trend in the industry is towards self-generation by companies. Oh, let's unmute it until I'm done.
Okay.
The trend in the industry is towards self-generation by some companies of their own websites. This is because Internet technology is changing the nature of training necessary to acquire, I took a breath there, nature of training necessary to acquire the skill of website development at an acceptable level of sophistication so that this activity can more and more be handled in-house. How do you simplify this? I know I had to read this about 3 times until I figured out what they meant. How can you simplify this? So I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to work on this. So there will be 3 minutes of silence, or let's make it 2, make it a little more challenging. Let's have 2 minutes to simplify this, and then if you raise your hand, we will be able to call on 3 of you to share what you've come up with. And Carol will unmute in about 2 minutes.
So as you're preparing for me to unmute you, if you have a lot of background noise, if there's anything you can do to try to minimize that, we would all greatly appreciate that. Okay, we've got about 30 seconds left or so for you to continue working on this. Just want to remind you that at the end of this time, I'll be taking everyone off of mute. Unless it becomes really distracting, if it becomes unworkable, then I'll mute all lines and we'll just figure out a different way to get your responses. So about 30 seconds or so more to work on this paragraph.
And I see, I'll tell you the names I see right now. I see Alan's hand is up. Anita's hand is up, and Barbara Morell has raised her hand as well. Oh, Alan put his hand down. I guess he did not mean to have it raised. Come on, Alan.
Yeah, I think we have a few more further down the list, too. We have Connie Rittenhouse.
Excellent.
Has a raised hand. I also see Diane Regner.
Excellent.
And Doug Berman.
All right, let's go ahead and get started then. Let's go ahead and get started with Barb. Barb, did you just put your hand down?
If you haven't put your hand down from the last time you raised it, you may need to click on that little hand icon again to lower your hand.
All right, we're going to go with Diane Regner. So Diane, I'm turning the floor over to you. Diane, how did you simplify this paragraph?
Okay, I'm going to unmute all the lines. Okay, Diane.
Okay, so, yeah. Okay, so I think I'm still struggling with it, but I put a header. A heading says company website trend. Then underneath that I said website development. I think I did more of a PowerPoint slide. Then I did a bullet point called self-generation, and then another bullet point called, labeled in-house development. And that's as far as I got.
Okay, that's good, Diane. So, Carol, can we do one at a time on the instead of everyone?
Okay, yeah, we'll try that, okay. Sangita.
So Diane, you're on the right track. Diane did a lot of good work in terms of adding a heading and adding a number of subheadings that would spread the information out over concepts like web development trend in the industry as a whole, the trend towards in-house web development, So Diane, you're exactly on the right path, and I think using headings and subheadings in that way will help bring clarity to the message regardless of whether it's PowerPoint, email, a note to your boss. It will be helpful regardless, so I think you did a nice job there. Let's see what Doug Berman has to add to the conversation. Can we unmute only Doug?
Actually, I don't have Doug listed as a call-in. I don't know which call-in number he is, so I'll have to unmute all in order to get Doug's comment. Okay, so I'm going to unmute everyone again, and Doug, it's all you. Doug Berman, if you're listening and can hear me, the lines are unmuted, and Sangita is waiting to hear if you have any thoughts on this paragraph. Okay, Doug must have stepped away.
We can come back to Doug Berman. How about Elaine Powers?
I'm here. I had myself on mute.
Oh, okay. Doug, why don't you go ahead and tell us how you simplified this?
Yeah. I work for Cisco, by the way, so I just muted myself anyways. I took the newspaper approach, and I started, remember the old Timmy the Newsboy, for those of you in Chicago, and I said, read all about it, newest innovation in website development. And then I said, you know, stronger skills in employees in web design means skills being brought in-house, less money for developers. And that's as far as I got.
And Doug, I like that as well. So you gave the title a fun twist, and I like the fact that you raised the issue right away, or you raised the opportunity right away that we now have, because our employees are more tech savvy. So it is possible to bring web development in-house. So thank you for that. We're going to do one more. We're going to go to Herman Belderock, and then we will move on. Herman, are you there?
Wait, okay.
Here.
All right.
I may not have gotten it right, but I summarized it into 2 sentences. I said companies are needing to bring website development in-house. Training via the internet is facilitating this need.
Excellent. And I like that too. I love the challenge. Rose to the challenge in terms of reducing the number of sentences. And let's go ahead and see. So I do like that a lot. Actually. Let's go ahead and see. Since internet technology makes it easy to develop sophisticated websites, some companies are now building their own in-house. How about that? Since internet technology makes it easy to develop sophisticated websites, some companies are now building their own, I would even eliminate the word website, are building their own in-house. How does that compare to this? The trend is towards self-generation of companies by their own websites. It's full of, you know, run-on sentences, jumbled messaging, and sentences that, I mean, really, the message is 1 or 2 sentences. So again, if we were to think about what are the key points with which you need to walk away from this webinar, upside-down triangle, simple sentences, headings and subheads. Let's see what else we can do to bring clarity, and thank you all for those of you who participated, thank you very much. And for those we didn't hear from, I know that you were working on it so well, so we appreciate that. I also want to quickly insert actually an apology for some of the technical issues we're facing here on our end. I know we have a Cisco caller on the line. Maybe we'll consult with you afterwards. Okay, let's talk about active versus passive voice. So just remember, being direct does not mean being blunt and rude. So when you use an active voice by design is much more direct. It makes the point quickly. That means you come across as more confident, your point is made with more certainty, and it's even made with, you know, some would argue, an added degree of grace and poise, whereas passive voice really conveys a lack of confidence, is not as clear, and it might communicate a lack of poise. So many people might look at the sentence, the pizza was ordered by the IT department, and say, hey, what's wrong with that? I wish it were my department. That's the only thing that's wrong with that. The second sentence, this proposal is a plan for determining how much efficiency could be gained from. Some people would look at that and see what's wrong with that. Well, let's find out. Instead of the pizza was ordered by the IT department, what if we simply said the IT department ordered the pizza? Anytime you see words like was, was, verb, by, that's a clue that it's passive. Instead of this proposal is a plan for determining how much efficiency, I don't know about all of you, but I almost fell asleep just reading that sentence. What if we simply said, this plan outlines how we will measure efficiency gains related to. This plan outlines how we will measure efficiency related to. Much simpler and much more to the point. So if we have another key takeaway for you, it is to read through any communication you send out and make sure it's in the active voice. And remember, if you're saying to yourself, in other words, I mean, just say in those other words. There's a really good and simple and dare I say, entertaining grammar book called Eats, Shoots, and Leaves. And it's a really good primer for anybody who wants to brush up their grammar skills or people who feel like that might be an area where they could, use some improvement. Now, Eats, Shoots, and Leaves itself is kind of a grammatical, it's fun. It's literally a play on words. So if we said eats, comma, shoots, and leaves, you might imagine a cowboy walking into your house, eating your food, shooting and leaving. Eats, comma, shoots, and leaves. If you take out the comma, we might think of a panda because a panda does in fact eat, shoots, and leaves. A panda eats, shoots, and leaves, and that's the difference a comma can make in changing the entire meaning of a sentence. And this book even covers things like, a semicolon. How do you avoid using a semicolon when in fact a comma is what you needed and vice versa? So in that first example, I ordered 6 pens, semicolon, 2 pencils, semicolon, and some paper is really incorrect use of a semicolon. All you really need there is a comma. However, if you're stringing lists together, multiple lists, I ordered office supplies including 6 pens, 2 pencils, and some paper, comma, 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 semicolon. So you got the office supplies. Now you're going to move on to workstations with built-in lighting, comma, office furniture, including now office furniture, another list, chair, chair mats, file cabinets. That's how you use a semicolon. You use semicolon to separate lists. You use a comma to separate words. So then that brings us to another actually very common mistake I see in writing. In fact, the writing programs we do here is using a semicolon when in fact you need a colon. So a colon is used to separate thoughts. So think of it like this. Use a comma to separate words. Use a semicolon to separate lists. Use a colon to set thoughts apart, to separate thoughts. I knew we would have to hire more people. There are several reasons for this, and then you can build on that. I knew we would have to hire more people due to a number of reasons. We were understaffed and overworked. Our client base is growing more rapidly. So you see there, you have a number of concepts, really separate lists in a sense, that we use our semicolon for. So unfortunately, fortunately probably, this isn't a course on grammar. I do encourage you to brush up on it through that book. A couple of other really common mistakes that I see is, over-capitalization. I had one woman show me something and she said, the engineers wanted to, she said, I wanted to give a gift of appreciation to the engineers, and I'll read what we have here instead. The engineers wanted to give a gift of appreciation to NASA, and I said to her, why is gift capitalized and why is appreciation capitalized? And she said to me, because, and she emphasized it, and she, can you imagine somebody using their voice and their body to make the point? She leaned forward and says, because it's a gift of appreciation. So that's why she capitalized it. Really, That is a very straightforward case of incorrect capitalization. There is no need to do that in the middle of a sentence because neither gift nor appreciation are proper nouns. The engineers wanted to give a gift of appreciation to the SF4. The other thing is confusing compliment with compliment. Thanks for the compliment, not thanks for the compliment. So a compliment, as in a form of flattery, is very different from a compliment, which is something that is in addition to, or something that complements or builds out an idea, or a complementing, set of skills. So I work with a business partner whose skills complement mine, complement PLE, not PLI. And probably the most misused phrase is comprised of. My team is comprised of several IT experts and one person from HR is actually incorrect. You use comprise the same way you use the word contain. So the correct way of saying that would be my team comprises several IT experts and one person from HR. But I got to tell you, this misuse is so prevalent that, when I, use it the right way, people, I've had people correct me and say, shouldn't it be comprised of? So be prepared for that as well. The other thing is, when do I say more clearer? Is it moderner, or is it modern, or is it, is it pretty, more pretty, beautiful, or how does that all work? So here's a simple rule. If it's a single syllable word, you're just going to add and est. Clear, clearer, clearest. Same with if the word ends in a Y. Hairy, hairier, hairiest. If it's a multi-syllable word, modern, beautiful, difficult, then you would use more and most as prefixes. So modern, more modern, and most modern. So just a handy little tip there. Also want to draw some differentiation between style and grammar. So the stuff we talked about so far is about grammar. So grammar is about punctuation, tense, sentence structure, and so on. But style, so stylistic decisions are used by communicators at newspapers and organizations, et cetera, about what kind of treatment to give words and phrases. So for example, let's take the phrase board of directors. Do you capitalize that? It's not incorrect grammatically to capitalize. It is a proper noun. It's not incorrect to not capitalize because really it's a collection or a body. So this is really a decision of style. It's not a decision of grammar. And if your company has a style guide, you can find out what they do. And I'll tell you, most companies' style guides reside within their communications departments, internal or external, and they're generally based on the Associated Press style guide. I would find out what style your company uses. So if you were to consult the AP style book, then it will actually tell you never capitalize board of directors. It will also tell you do not capitalize president unless it is used before a name. So the president will be visiting us today. If you're following AP style is incorrect, you would not capitalize president in that sentence. If you were, again, using president before a name, so President Obama, then you would. When you look at the way, numbers 1 through 10 or 0 through 10, only numbers 10 and higher are written as numerals unless you're starting a sentence. So in 100 years ago, 100 starts the sentence, so you write out the number 1. Or you would write out, 100, you'd write out the number 100 in words. So these are the kinds of things that if you familiarize yourself with them, your communication will be in alignment with the way your company communicates to begin with. Again, just real quick tips on commonly seen mistakes. Nothing happens on accident. Things happen by accident. See this all the time. It was on accident. No, it was by accident. Regards to does not exist in the English language. Regard is always singular in regard to Toward is always singular too, toward the end of the journey. I hear people use the word orientate, and I challenge you to find the word orientate in a dictionary because it does not exist. The word is orient. Similarly, the word conversate does not exist. The word is converse. Irregardless doesn't exist either. It's either regardless or irrespective. Okay? So less items, not fewer items. And why do these things matter? We said at the beginning, we opened with the poll saying, have you ever judged anybody based on how they write? Also how they talk. If you were to go to, you know, the president of your company or your CEO and talk about how you were orientated, that may not play very well. Or if you went to an executive somewhere, or even to your boss, or even a colleague who likes to write, and said something happened on accident, that would be noticed as well. So things to keep in mind. In addition to that, know your audience. Remember, communication is not about you, it's not about them. Who are they? What matters to them? What information are they looking for? In preparing your speech, your presentation, your writing, don't think about what do I want to say. Throw away that phrase altogether. What do I want to say does not matter. What do they want to hear? What do they need to know? These are the things that matter. Why should they read what you send? Tell them right up front in that opening paragraph why it's so important and what's in it for them. Importance of context. Don't assume that people have the same background as you do. Establish the, you know, what are you talking about? Why are you talking about it? Where is this going to happen? Who's affected, etc. Connect it to the bigger picture. How does your piece of communication, where does it fit in the bigger scheme of things? This really, if you're able to do that successfully, it really helps to build, you know, credibility and validate the information that you're sharing. Managing your message, you know, again, some key things to think about. We said, you know, we're going through what are the 3 to 5 key points here. As you build out your key message, you know, what's in it for the audience, build a context around it. Talk about the impact it has on your reader. If it doesn't impact me, I'm not going to read it. Let's face it. Think about the right people that it needs to go to. And remember, if we're only going to include 3 to 5 key points in a message, by design, that means we need to repeat our message several times and in multiple forms, perhaps adding another layer of information to each repetition. Think about, pay attention to, is it best for me to communicate this in a formal meeting or a casual hallway conversation, formal or informal? Is it better to send an email? Is it better to send the attachment with the email? Is digital signage going to work? So being deliberate about how you communicate really helps ground your message as well. So we're going to move on to summary here, and then we are going to open it up to questions. So if you have questions, if you begin chatting them now, we can make sure that we are able to get to them. So point number 1, keep it simple. Your message should be slim on words and rich in meaning. Don't use a 50-cent word when you can use a 5-cent word. Simple language is better. And remember, we're communicating globally now, so simplicity does go even further than it used to. Formal doesn't mean unfriendly. Being formal can also be friendly. Lead with your key message using an upside-down triangle. You know, at the beginning I said we said include 3 to 5 key points here. I'd really keep it around, you know, a lower number than that. And I'm glad we're, you know, repeating it that way here. Include 2 to 3 key messages per communication event and build your message over time. Remember, your audience will remember 20% of what you tell them. So it doesn't matter how much information you jam into a communication event. They're not going to remember anyway, so focus on the 2 to 3 key things they need to know now. When you use headings and subheads, when you vary your font and vary the color, you get a greater share of the reader's attention. Now remember, your message is in competition with hundreds of other messages your reader is being bombarded with at that very moment. Why yours? Why does yours matter more? Why should the reader give her attention to your message? Let her know by using headings, subheads, relevant content with the key points right up front. Make your message stand out in that way, not with a bright pink background. I've seen that too. Not like that, but by really chunking the information and putting the key points up front. Check for active voice, grammar, and style, and become familiar with your company's style guide. And with that, I think we have covered quite a bit in just under an hour. Do you have any questions? Carol, do we have any questions online?
Yeah, we have a couple questions over here. First, there's one from Sam, and this is just a grammar usage question. He says, I see people write that something happened on yesterday. Is that correct or incorrect?
So Sam, if you were seeing me in person, and I know some of my former students are online as well, I would probably almost collapse at the thought of on yesterday. Something happened yesterday, not on yesterday, and thank you for bringing that up because I've seen that used a lot too. So never on yesterday. It's not on yesterday, it's not on today, it's yesterday or today.
We have another question here from Sankar. He has a question about email subject titles. Any recommendations?
Absolutely. Make the subject title important and relevant. Instead of more stuff, and I've seen that as an email title too, give a small snippet or tidbit of, hematology research or more information around, whatever. The subject line, what you don't want is the subject line to get cut off so long that it gets cut off and people don't see it. You want to make it short enough, but it doesn't have to be one word either. Make it as relevant as possible to the reader.
Okay, great. And then one final question here from Christine. She asks if there are any grammar websites that you recommend.
Gosh, grammar websites that I recommend. Oh, we can look for that and get back to her.
Yeah.
If you can get an online version of each Shoots and Leaves, and I believe that's available, that's a really easy, quick reference. An AP style book is exactly like a dictionary. You look for the word and you look for the meaning, and it's in alphabetical order, so that's a really handy thing to have either online or hard copy as well.
Mm-hmm. So that wraps up most of the questions here,
okay.
Which brings us right up to the top of the hour. So,
all right. Well, I'm going to turn it back over to Carol. Thank you all very much. You know how to get a hold of Lake Forest, so if any further questions come up, let us know and we'll respond. Thank you.
And I want to thank you, Sangita, and also you, all of our participants. We at Lake Forest hope that you've gotten some good information from this session. Today's program, as I mentioned earlier, was part of the Leadership Learning webinar series and is delivered to you by Lake Forest Graduate School of Management. This program is an extension of our business management education, which is also part of our Leader MBA program, IMBA Virtual Scenario-Based Program, Corporate Learning Solutions. This program was made possible by our sponsor, the Trustmark Foundation. Again, our deepest thanks for their support. We do have some upcoming webinars, and they are visible on your screen. On Thursday, June 25th, Sangita Kasturi, who just did our presentation today, will be doing another presentation called Be the CEO of Your Career. On July 22nd, we will have our faculty member, Robin Thompson, be delivering the next installation of the Leadership Learning webinar series entitled Getting to the Heart of the Generation Gap. And this presentation has been approved for one HR General recertification hour. To register for either of these presentations, please go to our website, which is listed on your screen. It is www.lakeforestmba.edu. Finally, we value your feedback. You will be receiving a link to a survey in a little while. Please take the time to complete it. We use the comments and information from these surveys to continually improve our sessions. Also included in that email will be the link to today's recorded session and any other materials associated with this program. This will all be in an email coming from Natalie Corrado. With that, we'd like to end this session and wish you a productive rest of your day.